thank you for coming to our pizza and research program today. We do one of these every semester. So the theme for this one is going to be Soaring Beyond Borders, How Urban Birds Connect Us All. We're very excited for this. We have a panel from the Urban Bird Project at UTSA assembled here for you. I'm going to go ahead and introduce them. First of all, my name is Amy Bowie, and I am one of the librarians here at the Campus Library. So I do outreach and engagement with the library along with my team back there. So you will probably see us running around at different events around campus. If you, actually before I get started, just little housekeeping things. If you didn't sign the little paper sign-in sheet when you walked in, just go ahead and sign that on the way out so we have it for our records. I'm also going to be sending a copy of the recording of this program to that email address that you use. So just keep that in mind. Special Collections and Archives also has a table on the side right there. So I don't know if you have to leave early or anything, if you want to stop and take a look at that table, they have some pretty cool things on display. There's also at the table, there's a little zine that's standing up. You can pick one up at the front sign-in table as well. There's a QR code at the back that you can scan, and it links to our guide with a bunch of resources related to birding, and also it links over to the Urban Bird Project's website as well. Okay, so this is our panel. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Kenny. So Kenny Walker is an associate professor and director of the PhD program in English, and his research on climate and environmental rhetoric has been widely published in academic, professional, and community contexts. Next is Amelia King-Kostelac, who is an assistant professor of practice in the Department of Biology, Health, and the Environment, where she coordinates a variety of experiential learning and professional development programs, including co-directing the Urban Bird Project and the Honey Pathway. And I realize you're not in the order that I have you on the page, so if you could just wave when I say your name so we know who you are. Eres Gomez is of Lipan Apache Inde descent and currently serves as the research program coordinator for the Urban Bird Project. She studied raptors, birds of prey, during graduate school and completed her MS in environmental science from UTSA. Mariel Ortega is a current master's student of environmental science. Her research focuses on the microplastic exposure of birds in San Antonio and considers geographical and socio-economical factors of this exposure. And Olarotimi Ogungbemi grew up in Nigeria, where he witnessed both the beauty and degradation of the country's ecosystems. This upbringing fuels his belief in the urgency of ecological stewardship and the need for environmental literacy education. Currently, his research explores climate risk communication, regenerative ecology, and environmental justice rhetorics. So I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Kenny and Amelia from this point on, and they will moderate this panel. They will do some presentations, there will be a discussion, and then at the end, there will be some room for Q&A. And I have the mic for that if you have any questions. So I'll hand it over to you now.
All right, I'm seeing some birds out there. A couple an owl shirt there, some roadrunners, fabulous. Anybody know what bird is up here on the screen? Shout it out. Northern mockingbird, fabulous. Yeah, or also called senzontle, right? This bird is a borderlands bird. It crosses from the US and Mexico and is all over the South. A really, really significant bird. Again, I'm Kenny Walker, and I'm happy to be here today and talk about this fabulous project that we have been doing for quite a while now. So it's just a few of us presenting today, as Amy said. Okay, do I use this?
Yeah, no, I think the mic's not going through. So.
Oh, it's not going to, I'll use this. Okay, is that better? Yeah. Fabulous, okay, great. And so, yeah, it was just a few of us presenting today. As Amy said, I just want to say thanks to Amy for organizing this. Thanks to Diana Lopez, who we've been seeing out in some of our events and who helped organize. Thanks to UTSA Libraries. Thanks to all for being here. So we're going to present on Soaring Beyond Borders, How Urban Birds Connect Us All.
So as Kenny mentioned, we are a fairly large team. I'm not going to introduce everybody on this page, but I would like to highlight a couple of the folks who are not actively presenting with us today. So in the top row there, we have kind of our co-director team. So myself and Dr. Walker, also Dr. Jennifer Smith, who was here at UTSA until this year. She's now down at TAMU in Kingsville, but she still works with us. And Carolina Hinojosa, who is in the room with us and is a PhD candidate here. In the bottom row there, one of our fabulous research assistants, Henry Walker Camboli, is not with us today, but has been a wonderful asset. He is doing some really interesting research currently on the bird flu. All right, so quick roadmap of kind of what we're going to do today. We do have a really wide variety of different programs, and so what we're doing is kind of highlighting just a smattering of the different types of work we do to give a sense of the interdisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity of the program. So first, Dr. Walker will talk through restoration story maps. I'll talk a little bit about some arts-based engagements that we've been doing. Mariel will talk through microplastics. Eres will tell us a bit about feather rights. And then Olarotimi will share some wonderful stories about the African gray parrot. So a good place to start, and if anybody saw my presentation at the library last year, we started this exact same way, right? So Urban Bird Project, why birds and why here? So we think about kind of San Antonio. We all know San Antonio is special. It's special for birds too. And there are a couple of different reasons for that. Okay? So if you think about worldwide, there are about 10,000 species. 900 of those within North America. Texas has documented over 600 species, right? So 70% of all the birds that you can see in North America, you can see right here in Texas. That's a lot. So why is that? Well, one of the reasons is, as you can see on this particular graphic, we are right at the middle of two different migratory flyways for birds. And here we are coming right up on migration, so we're definitely going to talk about this a lot today. But that means there are tons of different birds that are coming through, oftentimes while you are peacefully sleeping. Okay? Another reason San Antonio is so fantastic for birds is because we sit right at the nexus of about 5 or 6 different ecoregions. So that means different landscapes, different plants, all of these different kinds of geographic things that pull in just a wonderful diversity of birds.
Yes, absolutely. So last night, as you were sleeping or studying or doing something fun, perhaps, about 500,000 birds flew overhead just last night. Yeah, this is from Birdcast. If it's not on the resource, let's get it on there. But you can look it up, and you can look up how many birds crossed over Bexar County at any given night. If you looked at it 2 nights ago, it was something like 40,000. Last night, you notice what a beautiful day it was yesterday? The birds noticed too, and they came in by the hundreds of thousands last night, right? So this map kind of shows sort of, where they went, and you can tell they come in right through Texas, right? So just an incredible thing to track and think about, the migration of birds, especially during this time of year. But there's also sort of the grand challenge that we have with birds, right, and with people. We have a loss of diversity in life and languages that's just happening incredibly rapidly right now. So you probably heard the stat that we've lost 3 billion breeding adults since 1970. So that's 50 years ago. What's the next 50 years going to bring, right? A lot of this is due to habitat loss, to climate change, anthropogenic mortality, like hitting windows, and yes, domestic cats. They're really high up there on killing songbirds, right? Not unrelated, we also expect to lose half of the world's languages over the next 50 years. So we want to draw this connection between language, land, and birds. And many of you have heard various stats on biodiversity. A lot of biodiversity is held on indigenous lands. So there's, again, a direct correlation there that will kind of thread through this presentation.
So I'm just going to speak very briefly about kind of where Urban Bird Project started. And quite appropriately, this whole project started over food and drinks around our coffee table. Dr. Walker and I are married. We may not have said that, but so there you go. The two of us and Dr. Jen Smith sitting around, food, drinks, it always brings forth good ideas, right? And so we knew we wanted to do something that would pull together all of our areas of expertise, avian ecology, interest in the borderlands and culture and citizen science. And so we went for a USDA HSI grant. We were fortunate to get it. And through that, we were able to establish an after-school program and a community science program in the Woodlawn Lake area. And so the programming that we offered, there's a group of our young students out on a neighborhood bird walk. We provided a whole variety of workshops and research development for the students to be able to combine avian ecology with cultural stories, and particularly putting an emphasis on their families, their neighbors, their community elders as sources of knowledge that were important, right? So getting them to see themselves as kind of central to the science. And the other piece of it that was the community science, you can see the little graphics. On the left there, all those little red houses were people who volunteered to participate in the program by allowing us to put a bird feeder in their backyard. They agreed to monitor birds on a regular basis. And then one of our research team members, Lauren Granger, she put these little backpacks on the birds, right? So the whole idea was seeing how the movement and abundance of birds was impacted by bird feeding, right? So all of these things were a great way that we were able to engage both with students and with community members in a kind of robust way that's not maybe your traditional research.
Fast forward a couple years, which is now like 2 years ago, and the Mellon Foundation had heard about our project and approached us and asked us two things. One, can you bring Urban Bird Project to UTSA, where it was just with SASD schools before? And two, can you make it art and culture led? And of course we said, yes, of course we can. And so we're kind of figuring out what that means, because an art and culture led birding program is not super common. So just really quickly, what we try to do is reclaim ecological knowledge in the borderlands. I think when a lot of people hear borderlands, they don't think of, ecology necessarily, or biodiversity perhaps. And so we aim to change some of that narrative. We want to train students in community engaged research, develop university community partnerships, provide public access to art and culture led environmental justice programming. For us, that means birding, gardening, events, talks, etc. We also run a Team Talk course in the fall on community engaged research. The flyers are sitting there on your table. You can check us out. We run a scholars program for training in community engaged and interdisciplinary research, and a bunch of environmental justice projects that you'll hear about today. And so we'll talk about a few of those now. And so a little bit about me. So as Amy mentioned, I direct the PhD program in English. I also run with Amelia and others a great program called CREA, where we take students to regenerative ranches and farms around San Antonio, and then a study abroad program in Veracruz, all paid for by another grant. My background is in science communication. Essentially, I'm a part of a group called the Rhetoricians of Science, Technology, and Medicine. So I was trained in environmental and science communication. And I love books. I love reading books. So I'm that professor, but I'm also the professor that loves to intervene in the world and get in community and understand knowledge that way as well, right? So a little bit of both and. So art and culture led bird project, what does that look like? Well, it can look like this. Gathering students together along the Yanawana, along the river, teaching them about birds, and then doing cool art, where they had a corazon designed by Anel Flores, a local community artist, and then the students would put a bird on top of their corazon. And we talked about what birds meant, about gratitude, about science, about art, etc. It can look like this. We collaborated with a variety of partners across the city, nonprofits here in town, and had an author come and give a talk about agua es vida, water is life, and how birds were super important for understanding relationships to land and to liberty. Sometimes it looks like hosting a workshop with Dr. Priscilla Solis Ibarra, who's an amazing Chicanx birder and environmental justice writer. And she gave a wonderful workshop for our scholars on developing your ecogenealogy. That is, whose legacy do you carry when you do the work that you do? How does it connect back not just to your family, but your ancestors before? Who do you look up to? How does the work that you do develop and continue that legacy? Sometimes it looks like engaging with our local Coatlatecan elders and knowledge keepers to run feather ceremonies. We'll gather students together, and Masayuki will demonstrate what it means to be a feather keeper, not by explaining it, but by just engaging us in ceremony with bird feathers. You'll hear more about that in a little bit. Sometimes it means inviting amazing scholars in Black studies and Black geography like Dr. Christy Hyman, who came out to True Heart Ranch and told us about Black history and its relevance to birding with terms like fugivity and vagrance. And then she especially promoted a kind of slow bird walk. So when you ever come with us to a bird walk, we don't go fast and just have a list of birds. We stop, we tell stories, we talk to each other about what those things mean. And Dr. Hyman's a fabulous a leader of doing that kind of work. Sometimes it means engaging with tech and digital media to listen differently, to hear differently, to see differently. So Mark Menjivar and Amelia led this bird walk across Woodlawn Lake. And here's Carolina sort of entangled with all of the digital media. And we're sort of walking around entangled with those recorders. And this parabolic microphone is like letting us listen to all the different sounds across the park. So we really want to engage all the senses when we do these slow bird walks. But as an art and culture-led program, it's also about addressing critical issues in science. We want to highlight scientists, ornithologists, and storytellers from the global south who by and large get neglected by avian ecology and science and arts and culture too. So here's our great friend Alberto, who has amazing stories from Veracruz and has engaged with us in a variety of ways to help bring light to some of the amazing knowledge that our partners down in the global south have and are more than happy to share with us. So it's a big program. There's a variety of things happening. And so one of the projects that I'm taking the lead on is called the Restoration Digital Repository. And the whole notion behind restoration, it comes from Gary Paul Nabhan, who argues that we're not gonna really restore land unless we also have different stories to tell about it, right? The narrative part has to go along with the material part, right? And so, who knows what this bird is? Yes? The golden-cheeked warbler, very good. Yeah, we got some birders in the house. That's great to see. This is a gold-cheeked warbler, super significant bird. I'm gonna share a quick story map that sort of describes the restoration process for this bird. And it was created, led by, I'm just gonna escape here and go to it, someone who's with us today. And so this is the story map that Amir here led on contributing. So thank you, Amir, for this beautiful story map. So restoration is the process of telling different stories, but also looking at it from a geolocated sense, right? And so for this story map, we try to gather stories via archives or interviews about the bird. All gold cheeks are born in Texas. They just flew in about 2 weeks ago. They're all over the hill country now having babies. And so here we describe why this bird is very much a sort of native Texan, why that's valuable, but also its migratory routes, its stopover sites. Alberto contributed not just the cover photo that you saw, but also some of the data along where this bird stops. We still don't know exactly where it stops, what it eats, how it is able to do what it does, and yet we know we're getting a better picture. There are threats with habitat. The bird is very specific to the cedar trees here, to the ash juniper ash. And so the fewer trees we have there, even though yes, it can be an issue, the fewer places there are for this bird to breed. But importantly, back to the connection between land and language, Amir and crew was also able to find a kid's book that was started by 2 Maya women who talked about the connection between bringing language back and bringing life back to birds. And so for us, the gold-cheeked warbler is not just something we can see in the Texas Hill Country, and yes, an endangered species that we'd be concerned about. But if you ever see that bird, we also want you to think about where it lives when it's not here, the people that connect with that bird down there, and also how they're doing, how their languages are, how their habitats are, et cetera. So we're trying to use your imagination to connect birds across geographies of difference. Here in Honduras, they use warbler art as a way of resistance for environmental justice. Again, stories of community sovereignty that are deeply connected to the art and culture in these lands and with these people. And that's not just true down there, but also here as well. So there are a variety of stories about why the ash juniper is significant for local people here and for many of us. So these story maps are simply a way to engage the storytelling aspects of restoration. And, of course, we're out there birding, but again, we want to bird and go slow and tell stories. These story maps help us do this. And so if you're gonna come out on a bird walk with us, say later this spring or the fall, we'll talk about biocultural conservation. And especially we're trying to build a field guide so that, you can go on a bird walk and see like a biological field guide, right? But come out with us and we'll hand you a biocultural field guide with a variety of stories about how this bird is significant to cultures everywhere that it goes. And so that's one of the ways in which we're trying to intervene into birding and provide an art and culture-led lens on migratory birds and their connections to people. I'm going to transition to Amelia, who's also a great living example of how to connect art and science, since she's a social scientist in a biology department. So, Amelia.
All right, yes, so real quick on my background, I actually started in art history, worked in curation and so forth for a while before coming back and doing my PhD here at UTSA in Educational Leadership and Policy Studies. So I like to joke that I am undisciplined as somebody who's kind of bounced around between a lot of things and gets to work in a science department where I predominantly run a lot of these types of programs, so experiential learning programs. Kenny mentioned the Coalition for Regenerative Ecology and Agriculture, CREA, is one of these projects that we run. So right now, we are taking students around to a number of local gardens and farms, and they get hands-on, and then study abroad coming up in the summer. Looking forward to getting back to Veracruz. Urban Bird Project is a big part of my life, and then the other thing that takes up much of my time is I work with Dr. Farhat Ozturk on the Honey Pathway program, which likewise provides students with tons of different opportunities to work with bees, do research on bees, learn beekeeping, and internships all over the place too, because things going internationally and nationally. So, what I'm going to talk about with my work with UBP right now is kind of focused in on arts-based engagements. So obviously we've talked a bit about the fact that we're interested in thinking about knowledge differently, right? And so one of the things that we know goes along with that is how you communicate that, how you experience that is very much driven by medium, right? And so writing is wonderful. There are also many other ways that we can think together, develop knowledge together. And so that's a lot of what I kind of focus on. So the quotes that I have up here are really just to highlight the idea that we are interested in thinking through knowledge in very material ways. We're interested in thinking through knowledge from a lens of responsibility and context, and thinking about research as more than just kind of the deliverables, but the entire process of inquiry. And so arts-based approaches offer those kinds of opportunities to really be in the experience, where the experience is really the whole point, right? And so we've done that in a lot of different ways. And some of these have kind of been highlighted. The image on the left there, those are the hands of Amel Flores, who has helped with a number of the art workshops that we've done, where we get students out both birding and then thinking about which birds are meaningful to them, to their families, making those kinds of connections. We also do a lot of other hands-on work where we kind of combine, ecological field work with cultural storytelling, getting students at all ages thinking about birds in different ways. One of the more recent projects that we've just wrapped and will actually be coming off the press really soon here is our first zine, Borderlands Bird People. So we will kind of keep in touch and make sure folks have a chance to read that. We have a wonderful collection of photography, creative writing, and some other kind of policy type writing that goes in there. And of course, down at the bottom, all of the sound work we've done. There are other things we've done too in terms of performance and movement that we simply don't document because not everything is necessarily intended to be documented, right? So the project that I'm really focused on now and am looking forward to rolling out as we're coming through migration is related to window collisions. How many folks out there have heard that telltale thud? And there it is, the poor little critter, right? This picture here was taken by a former UTSA student, Jackson Kinder, who was part of a program at UTSA where they've started monitoring how frequently this happens. So this little warbler was found at the Science and Engineering building here on campus. It might not be a surprise that that is a particular problem building, we'll say, for this issue. So why focus on window collisions? Well, after domestic cats, this is the #1 cause of fatality for birds. It's hard to count this for a variety of reasons, I'm sure you can imagine, right? But the estimates are anywhere from 365 million to 1 billion birds. USGS has actually suggested that number could be as high as 2 billion a year just in the United States. There was an article about, well, this would have been about a year ago now, where they did an observation at one building that was known to be a problem in Chicago, and they recorded 1,000 deaths just on that one building. So part of why we're focused on this is not just because it is a massive problem, but also it's highly preventable. there's really easy, cost-effective solutions that can help with this. And one of them involves UV stickers, right? So putting stickers up on the window so that it no longer looks like a continuation of trees and sky and the birds see it as a surface, right? So what we're doing to kind of engage folks on this, one thing you can definitely do as you're around on campus is you can contribute to the iNaturalist Campus Collision Project. So if you happen to see a bird that you know has died, don't touch it, please. Bird flu and all of that, but you also need permits and things. So take a picture, upload it to iNaturalist, and it'll help kind of contribute to the data and understanding which species are most likely to be impacted. Right? The other piece of this is a art project which is going to be rolling out across campus. So all of these are photos that I took of birds that have died on campus. Okay? So these were all collected by the Smith Lab. I was able to go in and photograph them, and I have been creating 3D models, which you can see on the table if people want to come up and play with them, handle them later. These are all birds that literally died here on campus. Okay, so we are developing an online education site, and the idea is these birds will kind of go out so people can encounter them, start thinking about where on campus is a problem, what can we do about it, and then connect into resources where you can learn both about how to prevent window collisions, but also learn about these birds that you've discovered on the landscape. So you can learn more about that Buick's wren and what its life is kind of like on a daily basis before it had its unfortunate collision. And this is just one of these kind of pressing concerns that we think about with biodiversity and all of the threats that are kind of facing not just avian life, but life in general. So I'm going to turn it over to Mariel to talk about her fabulous research.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Mariel, and I'm a Master's of Environmental Science student here, and I represent kind of the avian ecology side of the Urban Bird Project, because of course we can't do art on birds if we don't know anything about birds. So avian ecology, if anyone here likes birds, I highly recommend it as a field. It involves holding birds. It also involves going to Australia and accidentally getting lost in the Western Australian outback. That was fun. And currently it involves doing some research on microplastics and the bird's exposure to microplastics. But taking into account that if a bird is exposed to microplastics, then the humans living in that area are also being exposed to that microplastic. And so we are working with several community members in different neighborhoods in San Antonio to understand how this microplastic is spread out across San Antonio. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but first we'll have a little bit of background on microplastics. So these are teeny tiny microplastics, 1 to 5 millimeters in length. They can either be formed purposely, so these are things like microbeads and cosmetics. And there are some laws in place to ban microbeads, but they are not all encompassing, so microbeads and small microplastics are still being manufactured purposely. And in addition, they can be formed from bigger pieces of plastic that end up in the environment through biological processes. So if you think some plastic ends up in the soil and an earthworm gets to it, it starts incorporating it and breaking it down. Mechanical processes, so this is, if you can imagine a plastic in the ocean, the waves are hitting it, it breaks down into smaller plastics, or UV radiation, which can also break them down. These microplastics are found across land use types and land cover. They exist regardless of an area's conservation status. So they've been found in incredibly remote places, such as the French Pyrenees Mountains. That's because they're so small, they can be spread so easily through a variety of ways. So for example, litter, or road runoff, or atmospheric deposition is a big one, where they just float in the air and then they get dumped really far away from where they were originally made. Or even really commonplace things like mulching. Oftentimes if you mulch your yard, that mulch has plastic in it, and it further gets incorporated. In terms of birds, every single taxa of birds that has been studied has been found to have plastic in it. Most of this research has been on marine birds, but it goes beyond marine birds. So everything from penguins to hawks to quail to songbirds have been found to have microplastics in their body. Even less is known about how nestling birds are exposed to microplastics. However, the few studies that have looked at nestling birds have found that they do have microplastic in them. A lot of birds are what's called altricial, which means when they're born, they're completely helpless. The mom bird or the dad bird has to bring them food straight to the nest. And so how are these birds who are literally in the nest, they can't move anywhere, being exposed to these microplastics? Well, this can be direct ingestion. So if the parent accidentally feeds them pieces of microplastic. There was a study that found that maybe birds were confusing plastic for eggshell. Some birds feed their nestlings eggshell to get them extra calcium, and so if they saw a white piece of microplastic, they might have thought that was an eggshell. They could also be exposed through prey. So if an insect has been exposed to microplastic and the parent bird has eaten that insect and then passes that on to their nestling, they can be exposed to microplastic in that way. And lastly, they can be exposed just from the nest. And so preliminary results of my research has found that there are plastics in nests. Last year, we found there was a range of about 0 to 7% of plastic in nests, taking into consideration weight. And so plastic is in nests. The potential impacts of these range from two types. One, physical. So if you, for example, if a bird is filled with microplastics in its belly, it might not realize it's hungry because it has that feeling of being full. And there is also impacts to the endocrine system. So these are things that kind of impact hormones about growth, stress, weight gain, and reproductive. And so plastics can absorb chemicals from the environment that affects these endocrine systems, or they can be purposely inputted into the plastic. So if you think of fire retardants, or there's dyes or plasticizers, these are things we put in plastic to get the plastic to do what we want, like the firmness of it, to not catch fire. All of these things can disrupt the endocrine system. So what we're doing is we have across San Antonio in 3 different neighborhoods and on campus. Who here has seen a birdhouse or a bunch of them on campus? Okay, that's me, guilty. So we have put up all of these birdhouses in 3 different neighborhoods of San Antonio and campus. And what the idea is that potentially microplastics might not be spread equally across San Antonio, taking into consideration things like historical injustices in the locations of waste management centers, or places where illegal dumping isn't as well regulated. And so these 3 neighborhoods are Southside, Alamo Heights, and Woodlawn Lake. And we are trying to use birds as bioindicators to see if we can kind of see any differences in microplastics through the birds. And so what we're doing is we are not harming the birds, we are collecting their poop. And so community scientists who are participating will monitor their own birdhouses in their yards. And when there's babies, I come by, take some quick measurements of the bird's health, and collect their poop. So what you see here in the middle is an example of poop. Birds actually poop out what's called a fecal sac, and it's kind of like a diaper. It's like a little self-contained ball, and this is helpful for the parent birds to keep the nest clean. The birds will poop out their diaper, and the parent bird can easily remove that from the nest. And then lastly, we are also collecting the nest at the end of the breeding season once they're done using it, and analyzing that for bigger pieces of plastic. So in the poop, we run that through an organic digestion and a filtration process to extract the microplastics. And then under a microscope, I can separate what I think might be microplastics. And then this is later confirmed through a very fancy machine called an FTIR, which essentially uses light waves to detect the composition of whatever particle I'm putting it in. And it can tell me if it's plastic or not. Unfortunately, this machine is broken. And it has been broken for the past probably 2 years, and so I haven't had a chance to do any research on the microplastics, but in terms of the bigger plastic that we have in the nest, we have found plastics in them. As I mentioned earlier, this ranged from 0 to 7% of the nest composition was made of plastics. The breeding season, so this is the second field season we're doing, is currently in full swing. I was actually out yesterday holding really ugly birds. I don't know if you can tell how ugly they are here on the left. They're born without feathers, but it's a cute ugly, so we'll give them that. All right, so with that, I'll pass it on to Eris.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Eres Gomez. I'm the research program coordinator for Urban Bird Project. I got both my degrees from UTSA, so long-time roadrunner. Got my bachelor's in humanities and then my master's in environmental science. For my graduate research, I worked in raptor rehabilitation, which is the care, veterinary medical care of injured, sick, and orphan birds of prey. Raptors, or birds of prey, are the big birds, or predatory birds like hawks, owls, eagles, vultures, falcons, those kinds of birds. We also, at the center, have birds that have sustained permanent injuries, so they no longer can be released back to the wild, and so they lived out their life at the center and serve as ambassador species for conservation and education. And I'm very blessed to have been able to work there and experience these things and meet these bird relatives up close and in this personal, intimate way. So I'm very grateful for that. Birds have always been a special part of my life growing up. My mom was the one that first introduced me to the bird people. She used to feed birds and showed me, who was who, and I would help her as a kid. And so this is my mom. This was at the buffalo harvest, which was last month. We are Lipan Apache, so we do consider these to be our ancestral homelands here in San Antonio, Yanaguana. I continue this work through her. So feathers are very important to indigenous people all over the world, really. And here in North America, or what we call Turtle Island, they're also very important. So we use them for all kinds of things. They're considered sacred. The birds they come from are considered sacred. Birds are supposed, it's believed that they're extra special out of all the kingdoms, the animal kingdom, because they fly and they inhabit the sky and the heavens, and so they carry our prayers up to Creator. So they serve as that connection between us and the Creator. So this is just some examples of kind of what we use feathers for. So the upper left corner shows some smudging. That's a turkey feather being used to smudge, which is like a cleanse. In the center, in the top center, you have an eagle dancer. So he's got full length of eagle feathers. On the bottom center, we have some jingle dress dancers. They also have fans. They're holding fans made of eagle feathers, and they have them in their hair. Bottom left corner is a young man that's just graduated, either from high school or college. A lot of times, feathers, especially eagle feathers, are gifted at major life events such as graduation, a birth, a passing on of a relative, or anything like that. And so, upper right corner shows another man receiving an eagle feather from an elder. He's a veteran, so he's just come back from war. This is a practice that goes on hundreds, probably thousands of years, where people went off to war and they came back, and so it was given to honor their courage and their sacrifice, but also to help them with the healing of the trauma that they experienced from that warfare. And then on the bottom right is an example of a fan. There's many types of prayer fans. This one is a common style. These are caracara feathers, but we also have, eagle feathers are very, very special, very, very medicinal, have a lot of medicine. We do consider feathers to be medicine. There are two species of eagles here in North America. You have the bald eagle and the golden eagle. These pictures are immature, so they're juvenile. They're not quite adults yet. So if you look on the bottom left, that's a bald eagle, but it might not look like what you're used to a bald eagle looking like. That's because they don't get that white head and white tail until they're about 5 years old. So this one here is very, very young, probably within the first year, the one on the left. And they're prized kind of because of that real pretty malted coloring that's going on. Then the one on the right is an immature golden eagle. So again, those tail feathers are so beautiful. It's white with the dark chocolate tips. And then you can see the fans that we use from those. Now, feathers, the best feather is a living feather, so you want a feather that comes from a living animal, right? But we do use them on the ones that have passed. So now you know a little bit about, feathers being so important. And so kind of the issue that I'm looking into through the Urban Bird Project is, so not all Native American people in the US can legally possess and own feathers. It's limited to the 574 federally recognized tribes. So in other words, the U.S. government has, through the years, come out and only say they have formally recognized certain tribes. Well, in reality, in the U.S., if you just look at the U.S., because we're not even considering Canada or Mexico, but just in the U.S., there's way more than 574. For example, here in Texas, there are only 3 tribes that have been given this federal recognition status. Well, Texas actually has the highest population of indigenous people in the U.S. Like for me and my family, we are Lipan Apache. We are not federally recognized, so we cannot legally own or possess or use or practice this feather medicine. And eagle feathers are even more guarded. For instance, they carry some hefty fines, so you can have fines up to $100,000 and 1 year imprisonment for just one offense for one feather. And so the point or the thing I'm looking into is, this is an injustice. This is discrimination. It's a continued form of settler colonialism because this does infringe upon our religious freedom to practice and pray in the way that we want to. It invalidates our personhood because, the government comes out and says, well, we acknowledge this tribe, but we don't acknowledge your tribe. And it's a cultural deprivation because we've lost this practice, right? If we can't practice this feather medicine, we can't pass it down to the next generations. And then it's ancestral discrimination because the tribes that were given this federal recognition status, it goes back to treaty rights, and so not all tribes signed treaty rights, so we are not acknowledged as people. And so I'm just kind of looking into this, trying to see what we can do for the indigenous community here. I have a story map here. Y'all can check it out on our website. And what I've done is I've gone and I've tried to collect locations of all the tribal aviaries and feather repositories in the U.S. There's 11 of them. I'll just kind of click through it real quick, but again, you can, people that belong to federally recognized tribes can request feathers, but you have to belong to a federally recognized tribe. And so, again, that's just kind of what I'm looking into. I do plan to go and visit the 3 tribal aviaries next month. I'm going to go and interview the directors and kind of see, make those connections to these people that one of those centers has had the tribal aviary for over 50 years. They're one of the ones that started it in the whole country. So I'm going to just talk to them and see, what are options? What can we do here? Yeah, that's it. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. I'll hand it over to Olarotimi.
Thank you very much. My name is Olarotimi, and I'm a PhD student in the Department of English, and I'm from Nigeria. So this afternoon, some in the audience might wonder why African grey parrot within the context of Urban Bird Project. Yeah, while the Urban Bird Project remains rooted in the rich avian ecologies of South Texas and Mexico, the study of African grey parrot, serves as a strategic extension because it furthers the mission of the Urban Bird Project. Now, the Urban Bird Project is a cross-cultural, cross-national project, and we believe that if we extend this project to other parts of the world, we can see the level of injustice that some people, also suffer as people continue to cut away, birds even from these other regions. And one good bird that can serve us this afternoon is the African grey parrot, especially when we pay attention to the traits, the strength of this bird. Now, I want to invite you to meet this bird. This bird is a very intelligent bird that is renowned for its ability to mimic human speech and its complex social nature. And for many people around the world, it's the perfect companion. And that's why you look around and see that wherever you go, there's at least one African grey parrot in almost every city where people love birds. So I want you first to see this video about this bird. And at least this video is a testament to its intelligence.
Can we try this again? What matter? Whoa, good boy. What matter? Rock, good birdie. Griffin is the kind of student who says, tell me what I have to do to get the A. And then he'll do it really, really well. We did a formal study. It sounds quite simple, but it's really difficult. Imagine 4 colored pom-poms of these, here's our little pom-poms. You cover them with little cups, and then you start moving them in a certain pattern. Only then would I ask you, okay, where's the yellow one? So you have to keep track of all 4 of them. We used Harvard students and we gave them the same exact task as Griffin. And he either matched or beat them up to 3 moves. Only when we got to 3 and 4 moves did his abilities start to decrease and get below theirs. The reason these birds do so well on the cognitive tasks we give them is that surprisingly, although their brain is the size of a shelled walnut, it is so densely packed with neurons that the density is comparable to that of non-human primates.
But she rose 6, good birdie.
The last common ancestor that we had with parrots was back at the dinosaurs 300 plus million years ago. We do think that this manipulation ability, some limited aspect of it, probably goes back to a common ancestor, and then it developed over time so that you get to this much more complicated and complex ability now.
So we've seen how intelligent the African grey parrot can be, but then that intelligence also constitutes what we call a paradox this afternoon, because while it is cherished in homes worldwide, their populations are in steep decline where they come from. And we can say that that very thing that makes them popular is also contributing to their becoming endangered. Now, this issue, is fueled by the demand for these birds, elsewhere, other than where they are primarily found. For example, I'm a Yoruba man from Nigeria, and in my culture, as the Yoruba, we don't kill the parrots. We don't eat them because they constitute, they contribute to our spirituality. Then they also, hold great cultural significance for the Yoruba people. So many people around the world, they consider, what is happening to this bird as an animal welfare issue. But then we believe that that problem goes beyond just an animal welfare issue. It is a significant environmental justice issue. For example, the illegal wildlife trade and associated habitat destruction disproportionately harm marginalized communities. Communities where these birds hold great significance for them. And again, local people lose their vital parts of their ecological balance, their cultural heritage, and spirituality, and even traditional significance. Like she talked about the other time, right? And like we said, this devastation is often directly fueled by the demand, in cities like ours, in other Western countries, where people love birds like this. And again, our consumption patterns, the desire for exotic birds, and even products, linked to deforestation in their habitats, create a ripple effect of ecological and social justice thousands of miles away. Then, while we are being told that we are part of the problems, we can also be part of the solution. We can become ambassadors for change. And that's where we're talking about next. So how does this connect back to our urban lives beyond just being consumers? Today we have the African grey parrot in zoos, in sanctuaries. They are used in educational programs. But then as we tell their stories, as we let people know about their predicaments, then they can serve as powerful ambassadors. Their presence and stories help highlight our global responsibility for biodiversity. And they also, for many people who pay attention to their predicaments, they make distant problems feel immediate and personal. And for urban dwellers like us, understanding this connection is very important because it forces us to think about our daily habits, to think about our purchasing decisions, and how these can contribute to environmental injustice elsewhere. That is not about guilt tripping us or making us to think that we're guilty, but then it's a call for us to become advocates. So it's a way to empower us and to encourage more sustainable behaviors, ethical consumerism, and to foster a sense of global citizenship, even right here in our city. So, what can we do? We can take action together. Right? We said before now that urban communities are part of the solution. And we've seen that there are initiatives, around the world. There are campaigns calling for the reduction in the demand for wild-caught birds. And there are also moves to educate citizens about the true cost of illegal trade. There are fines, there are jail terms that are connected to this in many places around the world. And we also have programs that directly support conservation efforts in parrots' own countries. For example, in sub-Saharan Africa, there are also punishments that are attached to people catching them in the wild and selling them. So what can we do when as we're here, or as individuals, or as communities, as members of this university community? One, we want to practice ethical pet ownership. For example, if you're considering to own a parrot, ensure that it is captive bred from a reputable source. Never buy wild-caught animals. And another thing is to support strong policies. So we want to be part of the advocacy, for legislation that crack down on illegal wildlife trafficking. And we also want to support international conservation. We also want to help in educating others and raising and creating awareness, about the predicament of birds like the African grey parrot. And how best can we do that? But to talk about the issue, we want to share information, within your community, whether be it online or offline, and your student, at the school environment. So the story of the African grey parrot, can teach us a powerful lesson that our urban lives are intrinsically linked to the health of the planet and the well-being of communities, even far away. And protecting these intelligent birds is not separate from creating sustainable cities or fighting for social equity. It is fundamentally linked to the broader struggle for environmental justice. So let the voice of the African grey parrot remind us that ecological justice knows no borders, and that our choices, right here in our city, echoes around the globe. Thank you.
Thank you, Olarotimi. It's going to take all these knowledges together to solve these kinds of problems, right? It's going to take all the voices together to try and help solve these problems. And so we first came across this, and I'll do a quote as a sort of a guide when we first started this project. I just want to read this out loud. The future belongs to those who cultivate cultural sensitivities to differences and who use these abilities to forge a hybrid consciousness that transcends the us versus them mentality and will carry us into a nosotras position, bridging the extremes of our cultural realities, a subjectivity that doesn't polarize potential allies. If you want to get involved with us, please do. We're running a course in the fall. Again, the flyers on the tables. You can sign up through either English or environmental science. Please join us. We have a wonderful slate of amazing guests who are doing this work and more that you're hearing about today. We're running a scholars program again in the spring that we're continuing for next year. And of course, you can check out our website and see our upcoming events there as well. So thanks so much for being here.
Okay, so this is actually working. Mine is just angled incorrectly. So that's why. Thanks for, I know you didn't expect to hold the mic up the entire time. Sometimes that affects me. But yeah, that was a wonderful presentation from our panel over here. We can just, if anyone has any questions you want to ask the panel, now's your chance to do so. We have, we're going all the way until 1:30 if we want to. So yeah, if you have a question, just raise your hand and I'll bring the mic over to you.
So yeah, I'm in
a liberal arts student. I'm a music major, so I spend pretty much all of my time in the art building. And yeah, I definitely am pretty interested in the window problem. I have definitely seen our little friends, unfortunately, who have been killed, and it hurts my heart every time. And I know the art building has been putting stuff on the windows, especially on the second floor, to try and kind of prevent that. I was also kind of wondering, so for our own homes, especially if we have windows that don't have blinds or anything like that, what's something we can do to prevent those kinds of accidents?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. So some of the things that are really simple to do at home, you mentioned window coverings. So yes, if you do have dark curtains or shades or blinds, that can be something that's helpful. If you don't have that, there are all different kinds of stickers and decals that you can purchase. And so you may have seen some of them that literally look like a bird in flight. There's also a huge variety of what I was referring to as those UV stickers. So you put these stickers on and they create essentially like a geometric pattern on the glass that is not highly visible to the human eye, but is very, very visible to birds. And so basically anything that you can do that helps that glass look like a surface instead of trees and sky can be very helpful. Another one that's people often don't think about is not placing plants immediately behind windows. And that's one that was a challenge for me because I know I have like houseplants inside and they want the light too. But positioning those so that birds don't immediately see that green, those are all things that can be very, very helpful. And the stickers themselves can be incredibly cheap. So that doesn't have to cost a ton.
Lights out.
And lights out, yeah. Here, I'll let Eris talk about lights out.
Okay, so one of the easier things is to just turn off the lights. So it has, if you can, turn off or dim unused lights during the night. So the light kind of they follow the moon and the stars, and so sometimes if there's like a glowing hue coming from the city or buildings, it'll pull them and throw them off course. And they'll, like certain buildings, they'll kind of get stuck and circle around. There's tons of videos on YouTube that kind of explain the mechanics behind that, but that's one of the easiest ones we can do. And so there's a program that San Antonio has, I think Texas Audubon, and it's called Lights Out. So during spring and fall migration, when it's starting to hit, they just say, everyone, if you can turn off your lights overnight, because that's when most birds are migrating and flying is overnight. So that's one of the easier things. Oh yeah, going off of the plants, also be mindful of if you're feeding birds, where you're placing your feeders. So if you've got a feeder like in front of a window because you want to watch, sometimes they'll see that reflection and they'll mistake it, or that's another one.
Yeah, on that lights out topic, is there any kind of enforcement by that, or like a way to make action happen? Because there's so much unnecessary light, like driving up 35, there's some new sign, I think it says Mayfair, it's just like on all night, it's a huge eyesore. And yeah, I feel like there should be some kind of enforcement so that people don't do that.
I mean, I think unfortunately the short answer is no. The programs like Lights Out are voluntary, so it really depends on like the city of San Antonio kind of following through on commitments that they make. So folks like the Audubon put forward, these are the best practices. And so yeah, that definitely includes turning off lights in buildings. Folks may think of the Frost building downtown. Buildings like that can be incredibly problematic. So there has been movement and the city has done some things. I'll just say not everyone is thrilled with exactly how much has been done, but yeah, at this point, there isn't really any sort of legal enforcement. It's just something you hope people are willing to engage in.
There are good examples of other cities that go dark. And so Tucson, where Amelia and I were before, they're known to be a dark city for this reason. And so San Antonio is really interesting because it calls itself a bird city. It's tagged that way from various organizations that call it a bird-friendly city. And yet there are things we can do. It matters what kinds of lights the city puts up, right? And we can make better choices in those regards. So there are some city level policies that would really help. And I think it's just a matter of pushing that information up through city officials and into the developer community, right? That there are ways to sort of fix this. And if we're going to call ourselves a bird-friendly city, let's do the right things and be friendly to birds so they don't die by the thousands or hundreds of thousands as they fly over our city in the millions, right? So there are good examples. I would look to Tucson, and as far as like what kinds of lights and the designations that you can get. But yeah, I'd be super interested in hearing anyone who would like to pursue some of that work as part of the project, because that would be a wonderful conversation for San Antonio to have a bit more seriously. Thanks for the question.
One other project I'll highlight really quickly, UBC in Vancouver has done a fantastic job both with the way that they handled the stickers and how they've been dealing with the lights. And so they're a good example of, they actually chose to make the stickers into something that was intentional and artistic. And so, you know, not only are they stopping birds from striking windows, they're also literally kind of drawing attention to the many migratory birds that go through Vancouver. So that's another one I can think of offhand.
Art-led conservation. Yep.
Yes.
Do you have any book recommendations for those of us who are just like fascinated by this topic and maybe want to read more about it?
Yes, we do.
We do.
I think we shared a resource list. Yeah, there was some of our favorite books. I don't know, does anybody want to share out a book that they particularly like?
Share out a few books. Yeah, go ahead.
So one, it's not directly about birds, but it does contain fantastic information about birds, is the Cherokee Earth Dwellers. Is a fantastic book that provides a lot of stories about kind of relationships with environment and animals, and that includes some wonderful things on birds. Another book that I'm currently reading is Slow Birding. And slow birding is another wonderful kind of way to get into thinking about birding as something more than sort of the Pokemon catch them all thing. Mm-hmm. I need to update that reference. I don't think Pokemon's a thing anymore. Yeah, other
Timmy, do you have any suggestions? Okay, yeah. One book that was given to us early on that is a wonderful gift. It's huge. It's encyclopedic. It's called Birds and People. That's it. And it's this thick. And the authors did very similar work in looking at cultures across the world and their relationships to birds. And what they said was that book could have been like 5 times as big. Like you have to think, humans and birds co-evolved over millennia, right? The knowledge that local people have of birds, if they're intact communities that haven't been, disrupted, is an immense source of ecological knowledge. And the birds and people, as big as it is, and it really just highlights, certain things about individual birds, but it's a great source of knowledge that can lead you to other books and further information and more. So it's kind of like choose your own path. And it's such a wealth of knowledge for the cultural side of birds. Other Rex?
Okay, I don't remember if this is the exact title or the exact author because I read this a while back, but it has a picture of a blue jay on the cover. And I think it's called The Genius of Birds. This is called by Jennifer Ackerman. Oh, see, I did remember. That's a good one about like birds themselves and like their how their brains work, and it's pretty easy to understand. It's written really well.
That the book that you mentioned, that author has another book that I started reading, and I'm just gonna say I'm not a birding expert or anything, but it was very easy to understand for beginners. So that's a good one to start with. Anyone else have a question? I'll go here first, and I'll go to you next.
What is y'all's favorite parks or trails to go on whenever y'all are bird watching?
I mean, there's like a lot of little kind of gems hidden around the city, but I really like Frederick Park, or I think that's how you pronounce it. Just because, I don't know, I like the scenery and I like, it's got like a lot of nice trails. But, so that's one of my personal favorites. And then, like, I'm thinking, sorry, I can't, well, Mitchell Lake, I was gonna say Mitchell Lake. The only thing I don't like about Mitchell Lake is they charge like $10 now. And I know that's like $10, I'm cheap, but it used to be free like back in the day. And so, I don't know. Honestly, I love just like backyard birding. Like, that's like my favorite. I mean, I can just sit there or, you're amazed. Like, you'll be amazed how many species you'll see in here if you're just, in a few minutes. So, I'm a big backyard birder, but those are my two favorites. I mean,
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we started this project with thinking about backyards as nature engagement, right? Because like folks think, oh, I gotta go out there to see nature. But the beautiful thing about living here is the birds come to you, And it's true. Like if you have the right habitat, the birds will arrive. Like right now, 500,000 came through, But yeah, when I first came here, I'm from Nevada, California. I thought, oh yeah, there won't be any places to really do, that kind of stuff. But I was so wrong. I mean, the hill country is full of gold-cheeked warblers right now. I mean, and you often can't see them, but you can hear them. And so what's amazing is like birds engage all of your senses. So I encourage you all as you're walking across campus just to listen for the bird. They're always around you. And you can always pay attention to them. And we know both traditionally and scientifically, they will heal you. Like you feel better, your mind is healthier when you just aren't so stressed and you're thinking about other life forms that are trying to live and survive, and they're right there for you. So I agree with the backyard birding. One place that Carolina introduced us to is called True Heart Ranch. So the city of San Antonio is buying up old ranches and now opening them up for parks, right? So True Heart Ranch is one, pretty close to the San Antonio River. Beautiful, beautiful place. It's a De La Garza story, a De La Garza romance story. It's incredible. And they still have like the old like ranch house, and you can walk along, some of the landscapes they have there. Last time we were there with Dr. Hyman, we saw this, what did we see? The green jay. The green jay is a crazy tropical bird that normally only shows up in the valley. But with climate change, we're seeing birds move further north, right? And we know we e-birded it, and e-bird just did not believe us. They were like, nope, there's no way, it's here. But it was there, 2 of them right there for us. So it's really, I encourage you all, like even if you don't know anything about birds, join one of our bird walks, listen in your backyard, turn on and get your Merlin app and just have it record, and it can identify the birds for you, so you don't have to do it. But then all of a sudden, you know the sounds, and now you see the bird, and then you follow some links to cultural storytelling, to conservation work, right? Man, it's a great question because there are endless number of answers. Yeah, but some people might know some other good places.
I'm just going to take the chance to plug our next bird walk is going to be on the 25th of the month, and we're going to be visiting 2 of the different West Side creeks. So we'll be doing a stretch of Martinez and Alazan Creek. And I love both of these spots because they may not be locations that you think of as being fantastic for birds, but there are some really wonderful residents that I see every single time that I'm down there. And that includes kingfishers, kestrels, all kinds of wonderful things. So definitely please join our bird walk there. The other thing that I'll advocate is, a lot of the parks, just like Brackenridge can be a fabulous place to see just a ton of different birds. Government Canyon, the sort of prairie walk that you can do out there is fabulous if you want to see buntings in the spring. So if you want to see the Skittles bird, the painted bunting, that is typically where we go to find that one.
Yeah, just one more thing about backyard bedding. Yeah, I remember a summer ago, I went to Dr. Walker's house, and there were weeks I was there, and I could count about 6 different types of birds. And I asked myself why were they coming? Because the environment is conducive. That's why they come. They have food there for them to eat. So I tried to replicate the same thing when I go back to my house, and I will buy some of these feeds, put it out in my backyard. And they started coming, and I put on my Melon app, and I track. I don't know the names because I'm not too familiar with all the birds around here. So then the app would tell me the names, and I could differentiate with the different sounds that they make. So if we make our backyard conducive for them, then they will definitely come.
See, now you guys got us going.
Yeah, also I just remembered one more. It's not local, but it's like 2 hours away at Corpus Christi. So during fall migration is raptor migration. And so have you ever been there? Has anyone ever, you been there? Okay, awesome. So then it's beautiful. Yeah, like best time to go is there's a hawk migration watch site, and so like late September, early October is when those big kettles are going to be coming in. So broadwing hawks is kind of like the huge hundreds, thousands of kettles. A kettle is a big group of raptors, kind of like when they circle on the thermals. So yeah, if you can visit that and at that time, it's a really wonderful experience. So fall migration.
Quinte Manzatlan down in McAllen is an incredible world birding center. That I highly recommend that place, especially now. There's 500,000 that came through last night. There's going to be millions more coming through. Late April, early May, down in the valley was my window into birding. I didn't know what I was looking at, but they were there by the millions, and it's an incredible place to bird. Lorraine.
Hi, how y'all doing?
Yeah, great.
I don't really have a question. I was just gonna say, and the fun thing about the backyard birding is that once you start feeding them, like through bird feed or water or nectar, but also just plants and stuff, they keep coming back every year. We just moved up to our land like 2 years ago, and then every year they've been coming back and we get more. The other day when it was kind of like semi-cloudy and cool, we had about 20 crescent caracaras, and they're good friends of black vultures, and they were all just circling our land. And we didn't have dead animals. They were just waiting to see if the guy that was disking our land had killed anything. But it was amazing, and we had I use my Merlin app all the time, and I don't even know which bird it is. I have to do that because I've never heard it before, so you guys are welcome anytime.
Yeah. Lorraine was one of our Urban Bird Project scholars. Love to see you, Lorraine. Thanks for the comment. Birds attract birds. Even if you think you just have like sparrows in your backyard or whatever, like birds are attracted by other birds. So a good habitat for one bird is often going to attract others. As part of our project too, we try to build bird gardens. There's a whole list of plants of native pollinators, etc. You grow some food for you, grow some food for the birds. It's a good time.
Cool. Hello. I do have a question, but also just because people are talking about putting out bird feeds, I know that's inspiring a lot of people to do that, is obviously since the bird flu is going around, one of the recommendations, if you're like about to start doing that, is like every week, once the feed is out, like wash whatever you're feeding the birds with, like with some soap and water, just so that there's not a possibility of spreading contamination with bird flu and everything. It's protected for the birds. The other thing, I had a question for you guys, because I know obviously you are very big in the local San Antonio bird community. I know someone brought up Brackenridge Park. For the longest time, Brackenridge Park was where, I don't remember the name of the bird, but it was that egret, yes, they would gather in the trees there and everything like that. And I know there was a big push to, because they were like pooping in the water and everything. They did end up putting, from my understanding, like a sound something out there that's supposed to discourage them from being there. Yeah. One is that, so from my understanding, has that always been like a traditional place that those birds have migrated to? Because I understand that river system's been there forever. And two, do y'all have any idea or knowledge of like where they've shifted their roosting to exactly, or if not, if that would be a thing that your project would be interested in researching?
You want to talk a little bit? I can say a few. Yeah. You can go ahead. Okay. Yeah, it's such a great question. And I should mention one of our colleagues, Liliana Saldana, has been sort of engaging with communities and leading the conversation along that. But actually, other folks have been leading it too. There's a Yanawana Coalition for Migratory Birds. I think I'm getting that name wrong, but you can sort of Google that. And it's basically a group of indigenous women. Alicia Garlock, who's been doing that work for, I don't know, a decade, more, has been very attentive. So to answer some of your questions directly, yeah, it's a big problem because, if you talk to Alberto down in Veracruz, they'll say, well, those rookeries for those egrets, like we don't touch them. We let the birds have them. And the city of San Antonio is redeveloping Brackenridge Park, and yeah, they're tearing down the roosts, right, for those migratory birds. And there is a Migratory Bird Treaty Act that you're not supposed to do that, right? It's like federally illegal. So a lot of advocates have been pushing to try to raise awareness on that issue, and it has had some effects. There's a legal case, right, trying to stop some city activities where they'll bang the boards at such a high decibel that they'll try to like get the birds out. But that's affecting families who just want to play along the river. Oh, like fireworks, like we'll hear them from our, like it's crazy how loud those things are, right? Yeah, so it's pretty wild. You know, have the birds always been doing that? Some, not all. Like some of the cattle egrets, and correct me if I'm wrong, the cattle egrets are sort of non-native, but they've been here for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so, you know, there's always sort of that question. They're still migratory birds. They're still looking for a place to live. If we're bird-friendly city, San Antonio, why are we tearing down the bird nests of the park, right? There's a lot of politics on that. I would suggest looking at Deceleration News, because it's not just Brackenridge Park. Remember Bird Island at Our Lady of the Lake University? That place was super culturally significant. And they kicked out the birds out of that. They tore down the trees and they dynamited all kinds of stuff to kick out those birds. Where'd they go? Many to the dump, many to Woodlawn Park, where they're kicking them out there, many to Brackenridge Park, where are they supposed to go? It's a major issue. And you can find out lots of good sources. DCEL, the Yanawana Coalition for Migratory Birds, something like that. Save Brackenridge Park. Go look at Alicia Gardlock's work at her website. Follow her on socials. There's so much good information about that. It's a super important issue.
Yeah, the only other thing that I know is, so I kind of follow Bear Audubon. I've been a member of Bear Audubon Society for a while, and so they put out a call a while back that they were trying to figure out where they're going. So I know they have a project that they're working on, probably with the Texas Audubon chapters or something. So I think I'm trying to answer the question, do we know where they're going? I don't think we do. I think the answer is no. So other people that in organizations that study, that are looking into this issue, they're trying to figure it out too. I think Bear Audubon was trying to put trackers on them to see where they're going to roost. So that's like an ongoing thing, but that's probably gonna take years to complete that and then to actually get the data and analyze it, and, you know. So yeah, that's all I want to add.
Thanks for the question.
I have one question. I do want to especially plug the Merlin app. Is so amazing for anyone interested in birding. My question is, what recommendations do you all have for birding podcasts?
Bird Note, sorry. So there's the one I like is Bird Note, like Note. It's these real short clips that are like, 5, maybe 10, no more than 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes, but they feature a bird every day, and they just kind of give a little snippet. So you can sit there and you can listen to one after the other and kind of get cool facts about birds. And then there's a few like falconry podcasts that I subscribe to that I just kind of like hearing when they're out in the field and kind of their stories. That's all I can think of it right now.
Something tells me you might have a few suggestions for us on bird podcasts. So I'm question back to you, Melissa. But my response is Dr. Christy Hyman. Like when she came and visited, she does a podcast every month, and she basically travels around, and gives talks. But then she'll bird with folks and do a podcast about it. But it's always Black history and it's always birding, and I love that combination, right? And when you can do that. It's fantastic. And I don't know if he has a podcast, but there's a great book called Birding While Indian by Tom Gannon. He's a sort of mixed blood at Lakota, and he's a professor at University of Nebraska. He wrote a memoir about like a life list. A life list is when you like see the bird for the first time, and you'll be like, oh, I was here, saw that bird. But then he tells all these personal stories about what he was going through, what his life was like when he saw that bird. And so it's organized by this life list. And it's such an interesting story about racial politics, about the beauty of nature, about why engaging with birds over a lifetime is like a living diary. That book is so accessible. I think he has a couple of podcasts, but that book, I really highly recommend that. Anybody else? No. Or that question to the audience too. If anybody knows some good bird podcasts, let us know.
Yeah, I can add it to my guide. Just I'll send you an email, so just respond to my email to add whatever resources you guys know about that I don't have on there to my guide.
I know you guys said the science and technology building on campus is problematic in terms of window strikes. Has the university taken any action in preventing strikes?
No, they have not. I'm sorry.
Let me be diplomatic. No is the short answer. There have been a couple, there was a student who I showed the photo that he had taken of the warbler, did present facilities with a cost plan for what it would take to put stickers on, and it was turned down.
Follow-up, is there any pressure we can put on our students to
Yeah.
facilitate?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm talking to administration about it, contributing to the campus collision. So when you do see birds, if, the more data we have to show where the problem sites are, the more persuasive I think it can be. But certainly too, as we kind of roll out this little art project, we will be looking to fundraise and hopefully find some folks. We have some people out. I'm not going to name names yet because I don't want to jinx it, but I think we do have some folks who might be interested in helping to make that a thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know how they promote on the buses, UTSA on our old school buses?
Yeah.
That's what they need to do for that building.
Right? Yeah.
Promote
Yeah.
it, artify it, you know?
Yeah. What students can do is such a great question. And I mean, just talk about it. Talk about it with your professors when you're in that building, with your friends, et cetera. Like, there's no better way than a groundswell of conversation to get that up to the highest levels. And we know private donors share those values, right? Who care about birds. They know San Antonio is significant. So if they're hearing it from the bottom and the top, then maybe we can start having a conversation about pretty simple actions we can take but it's facilities, it's upper leadership. But if we're the road runners and we're bird-friendly city San Antonio, let's do this, right? Let's do it.
All right, so I love ending with an action plan. So once again, thanks everyone for being here. I know half the room had to leave to go to the 1 p.m. class, but I don't know about you, my personal favorite part of every session that we do is the Q&A because it just feels like a seminar. So for those of you who are still left here, we just give our panel a big round of applause. If you want to just keep eating, I think we have like a couple minutes so we can stay in the room. Oh, also I want to acknowledge my team that worked on this in the library, so we just give them a hand too. And that's all I have to say. So thank you again for everybody, and we'll hang around here for a little bit.
Sounds good. Thank you.